Hello, welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis, and today we are continuing with our Album of the Year series. We're up to part 5. Ooh. This episode, we're going to cover the years 2005 to 2014. Now, by way of quick recap, those of you who are new to Papa Nick's Album of the Year series, what I'm trying to do for each of these years, I'm going to give you some albums that we just have to mention. Then I'm going to give you my 3 runners up, and then I'm going to give you my album of the year. And the point of this is not necessarily to identify the best album of the year. I'm not saying that my album of the year is the best album recorded that year, although I think it is a very good album. I'm not necessarily saying it's my favorite of the album of the year, although these albums of the year are among my favorites. What I'm trying to do is the purpose of the exercise has been to identify albums that I think are particularly indicative of my taste. It's a way of mapping out, diagramming what my sense of musical goodness is. And so that's what I'm using to determine my album of the year. Now, based on that conversation, it seems like it could go without saying that I don't necessarily need to do the subjectivity notice, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. We firmly believe here at Papa Nick's Music that there's no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad art. There is only art that we like and art that we do not. And as long as we keep that in mind, this is a wonderful conversation. It's entertaining, it's informative, it's our chance to see the world from somebody else's perspective. And I would argue that is always a good thing. The conversation goes off the rails real quick, though, as soon as somebody in that conversation insists on being seen as objectively right. So, I'm not making objective claims here. Please don't interpret anything I say as being an objective claim. And I would appreciate it in the comments if you decide to comment on this video. I strongly encourage it. But if you put a comment down there, if you would avoid using objective language, trying to frame your comment objectively, I would appreciate that. Cool. Now, shall we? Let's jump into this thing. We're starting off this week's episode with the year 2005. 2 weeks ago, when I did my last album of the year thing, I got to 2004. One of my runners-up was ALO's Animal Liberation Orchestra's Fly Between Falls. Last week I did a video about healing music, and I talked more about Fly Between Falls then. And one of the things I pointed out was that I had made a mistake when I put that album in 2004. When it was originally recorded and released as an independent recording, it was released in 2005. It was then re-released in 2006 by Brushfire Records as a national release. So I should be talking about Fly Between Falls this week, but I've already talked about it, so we're not going to include it. Just know it would be in here in one of these first 2 years of this episode. So, 2005 proper. I've got 2 albums that I gotta mention. They don't quite qualify for runner-up or album of the year, but I gotta mention them. The first is the All-American Rejects with their album Move Along, which was mildly popular, but I really liked it. And then the second was Paul McCartney's Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, which I've only recently become familiar with. Pretty good album. So, gotta mention those. But when it comes to album of the year, my third runner-up is Blue Guitars by Chris Rea. Regular viewers will know I really like Chris Rea. My second runner-up is Ben Folds' Songs for Silverman. Good solo album from Ben Folds. My first runner-up is Jack Johnson's In Between Dreams. I really like In Between Dreams, even though I can't seem to say it today. But when it comes to album of the year, it was actually pretty clear to me. My album of the year has to be Out of State Plates by Fountains of Wayne. Out of State Plates is an interesting album. I mean, as you can see, it's a double album. And it's interesting because at this point they had released 3 albums. Their self-titled debut, Utopia Parkway, and Welcome Interstate Managers. So they're only 3 albums into their recording career, and this is a collection of, unreleased material, demos and stuff like. You don't normally see this kind of retrospective until much later in an artist's career. There are a couple of new recordings on here, Maureen and The Girl I Can't Forget. Oh man, I love The Girl I Can't Forget. But most of all, this is just a collection of songs either Chris Collingwood or Adam Schlesinger, or the both of them, wrote. A couple of them are covers, but none of this stuff was quite, I don't know, good enough to make it on one of the first three albums. But it's an entertaining album. I really enjoy the hell out of it. Album of the Year 2005, Out of State Plates by Fountains of Wayne. 2006. With 2006, we got a pretty strong year here. I've got several gotta mentions. I've got to mention Other People's Lives by Ray Davis. Love Ray Davis. I've got to mention The Believer by Rhett Miller. I really like Rhett Miller. I like Old 97s, and Rhett Miller's the front man for Old 97s. So, but The Believer, good album. John Mayer released Continuum. Bowling for Soup. Oh, I love Bowling for Soup. They released The Great Burrito Extortion Case in 2006. A fun album. But when it comes to Album of the Year, my third runner-up is Lindsey Buckingham's Under the Skin. My second runner-up is David Gilmour's On an Island. I really like that album. My first runner-up, been a couple of years since I've talked about them, but they released something in this year, so I'm going to have to talk about the Barenaked Ladies. And in 2006, they released Barenaked Ladies Are Me, which I'm also going to talk about next year, so I'll save further discussion for then. But my album of the year is, and I have to use the pop-up here, The Kooks, Inside In and Inside Out. And I'm having to use this because I don't have a physical copy of this album. I downloaded it. I bought it as a download. He said redundantly. I love The Kooks. I love this album. It's a fun album. It's got a couple of just fantastic songs on it, but mostly it's just a good, fun, snappy album. I like The Kooks. Fun stuff. Which gets us to 2007. I almost said 20,007. 2007. Again, I've got several gotta mentions. Feist released The Reminder. I really like that album. The Bird and the Bee had their debut album, self-titled, this year. John Mellencamp released Freedom's Road. Paul McCartney released Memory Almost Full. And Pink Martini released my second favorite of their albums, Hey Eugene. Really good album, that. But when it comes to Album of the Year, my third runner-up is, and I said I was going to mention it again. Last year, we had Barenaked Ladies Are Me. This year, we've got Barenaked Ladies Are Men. These two albums kind of go together. They've got very similar album art done by the same people. When Barenaked Ladies Are Me was first released in 2006, one of the options that you could, one of the ways that you could purchase the album was was digitally. You could buy a USB stick that had the album on it, and that stick had the full two album package, Barenaked Ladies Are Me and Barenaked Ladies Are Men. A total of, I think, 29 songs. Might be wrong on that, but it's something like that. And when they first released Barenaked Ladies Are Me, you could buy the thing to get both albums together. I didn't do that. I went ahead and bought the disc in 2006, and then I bought the other disc in 2007. Of the two, I like Barenaked Ladies Are Men a little bit better, but they are both fantastic albums, and they go well together. It should have just been released as a double album, but hey, who listens to me about this kind of stuff? But my third runner-up, Barenaked Ladies Are Men by Barenaked Ladies. My second runner-up, we've got ALO, Animal Liberation Orchestra again, this time with their follow-up to Fly Between Falls, the album Roses and Clover. Very good album, particularly with songs like Monday and Plastic Bubble. Oh, I love those songs. My first runner-up is probably my favorite album by Fountains of Wayne, and that is Traffic and Weather. And Traffic and Weather, if I had done this exercise, say 2 years ago, Traffic and Weather would have been my album of the year. I mean, hands down, easily my album of the year. And that's because a couple of years ago, I didn't realize that. Sorry, my CDs were stuck together. I didn't realize that the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band had released an album in 2007. Um, I'm a huge fan of the Bonzo Dog Band. Back in my first episode of this, went from 1965 to 1974. There were 2 years there where I had Bonzo Dog Band albums as runners-up. 67, I think. Yeah, 67. Their debut album, Gorilla, was my first runner-up. 69, I believe, my second runner-up for that year was their album, Keynsham. I adore both. I adore all of the Bonzo Dog Band albums from the 60s up. Even their contractual obligation album, ironically titled Let's Make Up and Be Friendly, since they had broken up by then. I love all of this stuff. I love the Bonzo's music. I love the atmosphere of chaos that exists in all of their songs. I love the sense of humor that they have, but I also love the musical intelligence that they have. It's wonderful music, and I love it. And I found out, I think early last year, I was doing a video ranking the albums of the Bonzo Dog Band. Found that they had released Pour l'amour des chiens in 2007. When I found out that Neil Innes was a part of this, I thought, okay, it's going to be good because, if Neil Innes is attached to it, it's going to be good. But I was curious to see how they would handle not having Viv Stanshall. And it turns out they had to use 3 people to replace him: Ade Edmondson, Stephen Fry, and Phil Jupitus. And when you need 3 people to replace one person, and those 3 people are Ade Edmondson, Stephen Fry, and Phil Jupitus, for crying out loud, those are some mighty big shoes that they were having to fill. This is an excellent album. This is not let's cash in while there's momentary interest in the band because it's 40 years since we released the first album. This is an actual, real, good, serious work. I love Pour l'amour des chiens by the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. Album of the year, 2007. But as strong as 2007 was, 2008 is really strong. I've got a bunch of gotta mentions. I gotta mention Vampire Weekend's debut. Really like that album. Gotta mention Tristan Prettyman with Hello X. I've got, I think, 3 of Tristan Prettyman's albums. I like her. She's good. Goldfrapp released Seventh Tree, which I have to include here, if only for the song Caravan Girl, which I adore. She and Him released their first album, Volume 1. The Ting Tings released We Started Nothing, and my goodness, did I like that album when it came out. One of my favorite singers that I like that nobody I know knows about. I live in Texas. He lives in Philadelphia. And so there's not much in the way of overlap there. But the singer Mutlu released Living It. I'm a huge fan of Mutlu. I first became aware of him when he was opening for Joe Jackson at about this time. And he had an intro set. He had a guitarist playing with him to do some leads. But it was mostly just him playing his guitar and singing. Skipping ahead, I saw him several years later opening for Hall & Oates, and that one he was just by himself out on the stage, just playing and singing. The man's an amazing singer. I was so impressed with him in that first show. This was the first time I had been able to see Joe Jackson live in concert, and I was really excited about seeing Joe Jackson. But I was so impressed with Mutlu that I left while Joe was doing his last encore to go up front so that I could get to the merch table and have Mutlu sign the EP that he was hawking there at his merch table. And because there was nobody out there, I had a chance to stand and chat with him for a little while. I was very, very pleased for that opportunity. I'm very impressed with the man. I like Mutlu. And Living It, gotta mention. Strongly recommended, by the way. My final gotta mention for the year is Randy Newman's Harps and Angels. Very strong album from Randy Newman. But when it comes to album of the year, my third runner-up is, I was just talking about the old 97s a couple of years ago, last year I guess, with Rhett Miller. The old 97s with Blame It on Gravity, the album that introduced me to the old 97s. Really like that album. My second runner-up, speaking of Mootloo, we've got Joe Jackson with Rain. Oh my God, is that a good album. My first runner-up is, can't swing a dead cat on this list without hitting Ben Folds. And here we have Ben Folds with his solo album, Way to Normal, which I think is his best solo album. But my album of the year, it's one of those that, like Mootloo, I know this album, I know this artist, and nobody that I know knows who this person is until they hear the name. Yes, his last name is Zevon. So yes, Jordan Zevon is Warren Zevon's son. And in 2008, he released Insides Out. I adore this album. It is extremely, very strongly recommended. If you've never heard it, give it a try. It should be available on streaming services. It was last time I checked. I've got a hard copy, so I don't worry too much if it's dropped off of Spotify or Amazon Music, wherever you get your music. Very well written, very clever lyrics, good, catchy, punchy, guitar-driven pop. Can't say enough positive things about Insides Out. Strongly recommended. Jordan Zevon, Insides Out, my album of the year, 2008. Okay, so we've had a couple of fairly big years. 2009, not that big. I've got two Gotta Mentions, and one of my Gotta Mentions is a Kiss album, for crying out loud. So that should give you an idea of what the quality is overall here. The Kiss album is Sonic Boom. And I like Sonic Boom. It sounds kind of like old 70s era Kiss, which is the Kiss that I like. But I mean, if you're talking about the best albums recorded in a year and you feel compelled to bring in Sonic Boom, this is not a strong year. My other Gotta Mention is Tinted Windows. Their self-titled album. Tinted Windows is a super group of power pop performers. We have Bun E. Carlos from Cheap Trick on drums. We've got Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne on bass. We've got James Iha from Smashing Pumpkins, and I apologize for mispronouncing the name, on guitar. And we've got the Hanson singer, whichever Hanson it was that was doing the singer. I blanked out on his name. And it's a very good album. They didn't do anything much beyond that I'm aware of, but they started off with a strong album. But when it comes to album of the year, my third runner-up is the album Up to Now by Snow Patrol, which is a collection. It's a compilation album, greatest hits up to this point, that I'm including because it's got the song Just Say Yes, which I adore. So Snow Patrol Up to Now is my third runner-up. My second runner-up is the album The Planeteer by Julian Villard, which has the song Jody, which I adore. My first runner-up is Chris Isaak's Mr. Lucky, a strong Chris Isaak album, even though most of his albums are strong. But when it comes to album of the year, we've got, I do love me some power pop, and Fastball is good power pop. Little White Lies is a very good album. The title track especially, very good song. I like Fastball, I like Little White Lies, and it's my album of the year from 2009. 2010, a few more Gotta Mentions than we had last year. We've got To the Sea by Jack Johnson, No Better Than This by John Mellencamp, Lonely Avenue by Ben Folds and Nick Hornby. Sorry about that. We've got Brian Wilson Reimagines Gershwin, which, I mean, it's entertaining to listen to, but at the same time, I don't want to get hate mail from Brian Wilson fans out there. But when it comes to album of the year, runner-up number 3, our third runner-up is Volume 2, the second album from She and Him. I'm a huge fan of She and Him. I like that sound. I like Zooey Deschanel as a singer. I think she's a good musician, and she has a very good songwriter. Her songs have a nice bounce to them, a nice hook to them. I like that. We've got for our second runner-up another ALO album. This time their 2010 release, "Man of the World." My first runner-up though is once again Barenaked Ladies. This time with "All in Good Time." "All in Good Time" is the first album that Barenaked Ladies released after Stephen Page left or was invited to leave the band. Left or was invited to leave, depending on whom you talk to. So they're down to a 4-piece now. And I was nervous when they first released it because Stephen Page was a huge integral part of the band. And I thought, okay, you take that integral part out, are the remaining pieces going to be able to survive and do well? And "All in Good Time" is one of the stronger Barenaked Ladies albums. So yes, it was a very good sign, a very good album. I saw them, I think, 3 times on that tour alone. But if we're talking about album of the year for 2010, not much in the way of contender. We have to have Josh Rouse's "El Turista." I've mentioned El Turista in a couple of videos before. This is the first that I had ever heard of Josh Rouse. I've been talking the last couple of weeks about a time in my life when I was listening to adult alternative radio stations, desperately looking for new music because I needed something to make me feel good about life. And this is one of the albums that I found. I had heard a song or two off of this, and I thought, okay, I like the way that sounds, so I went ahead and tracked down the album. The concept of the album is, the CD booklet is in the form of a passport, right? This is the album of the tourist, and it's musical tourism. He's going to Central American and Caribbean locales, and it's music that you can very easily imagine playing on the pool area at a resort in Mexico or something like that. It's got that kind of sound to it, which I very much like. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I found an artist that I like. And so I started listening to his other works, and no, it turns out I really like El Turista. I'm okay with Josh Rouse as the rest of his stuff, but I really like El Turista. It is my album of the year 2010, and it's one of my all-time favorite albums. So this is one of the few years where, yeah, my favorite album of the year is album of the year. 2011. The 2011, I've got one gotta mention. And I've got to mention more because of its, I don't know, what I've got to mention is an Alice Cooper album released this year, and that's "Welcome to My Nightmare." It's the sequel to his first "Welcome to My Nightmare." This time, he's signifying it's a sequel because the word 2 is now the number 2. So it's "Welcome number 2, My Nightmare." And it's nowhere near as good as the first one, but I mean, it's Alice, and he's mining the same material that he mined back then, and it's not bad, and so yeah, we gotta mention it. I like Alice Cooper. But when it comes to album of the year, my third runner-up, believe it or not, is Steve Martin and the Steep Canyon Rangers with "Rare Bird Alert." I'm not normally a fan of bluegrass, but I can listen to Steve Martin play his banjo all day long. So, Steve Martin. Third runner-up. Second runner-up, while we're talking about people that you don't normally think of as musicians, Hugh Laurie, the British actor who came to fame in the TV series House, whom I knew from his work with Stephen Fry in British comedy, both with a bit of Fry and Laurie and with Jeeves and Wooster. Hugh Laurie is also a very good pianist, and he released "Let Them Talk," which was his first album of old blues standards that he's playing. Very good album. I like it a lot. My first runner-up is Jonathan Coulton's "Artificial Heart," because I really like Jonathan Coulton. Man's got a fantastic sense of humor. But album of the year, not a hard call. We've got the Beach Boys with the "Smile Sessions." I got the small version. I couldn't afford the big one. this if I'm doing like an album ranking, something when I did my Beach Boys album ranking, I didn't include this because it's a compilation, it's after the fact, it's a reimagining, you know. But for this kind of conversation, it fits like a glove. I mentioned week before last when I was doing episode 4, when I was talking about Brian Wilson Presents Smile. I prefer that version to this. Partly because I heard that version before I heard this version. Partly because that version is finished, it's completed, it's got a sense of completion to it. This one does not have. But this one has Carl and Brian and Al and Bruce and Mike and Dennis all singing together. Brian's didn't have that, so there's some definite advantages to the Beach Boys Smile sessions, and it is just a lovely recording. So my album of the year for 2011. 2012, I've got two gotta mentions, and again, one of them's a Kiss album. They released Monster, and Monster overall is a decent album. I mean, compared to the high octane crap that they were churning out in the 90s, they actually came out with a couple of decent albums here after the turn of the century. My other gotta mention is Bruno Mars' Unorthodox Jukebox. Now, I've got to be honest, I can't really claim that I'm a Bruno Mars fan, but I do like listening to his music, and there's a lot of good stuff on Unorthodox Jukebox. When it comes to album of the year, though, we're kicking off. Actually, all three of my runners-up are last gasps from old bands. My third runner-up is Ben Folds 5. They reunited. They did a concert tour or two together, and they released an album of new material called The Sound of the Life of the Mind, which has some very good stuff on it. It's a little uneven, but it's got some very good stuff on it. My second runner-up, similar situation. Van Halen brought David Lee Roth back into the fold, and they were touring, and they released A Different Kind of Truth, which is a little uneven, but has a few nice songs on it. My first runner-up is The Beach Boys with That's Why God Made the Radio, the album that they got together and recorded as part of the 50th anniversary tour that they were doing, that has all of the surviving Beach Boys, with the exception of Ricky Fataar and Blondie Chaplin, participating. That bothers me, but I let it go. But when it comes to album of the year, I must really like Donald Fagen. This is Donald Fagen's third album of the year. He won spoiler alert, he won album of the year for The Nightfly, and he got album of the year for Kamakiriad. Skipped over Morph the Cat. Not a big fan of Morph the Cat, but man, he came back to form with Sunken Condos. I adore this album. Sunken Condos is fantastic. It is just like Kamakiriad, just like The Nightfly. It is all the lush glory that is Steely Dan without any of the skeevy weirdness. Well, not much of the skeevy weirdness. We got a little bit of the skeevy weirdness. But good album. Sunken Condos. Donald Fagen is album of the year for 2012. 2013. In 2013, I've got two gotta mentions. First is New by Paul McCartney, which, decent album. It's not Venus and Mars, but it's a decent album. And the second is the debut self-titled album from the 1975. I haven't listened to a whole lot of the 1975, but I've listened to bits and pieces. I've listened to this album and a few tracks from some of the later albums, and what I have listened to, I like. So sometime in the not too distant future, I'm going to be doing a nice long deep dive into the 1975. And that all kicked off with their first album here in 2013. But when it comes to album of the year, my third runner-up is the album Shadows by Lenka. I liked her first album, but yeah. My second runner-up is Volume 3 from She and Him, creative titling there. My third runner-up is Grinning Streak by Barenaked Ladies, which is one of their stronger albums. But when it comes to album of the year, now, okay, so I'm talking the 1975 Lenka, She and Him, Bare Naked Ladies after Stephen Page left the group. I mean, this is stuff that I like, but it's not these are not billion seller recording artists here, right? So it should be no surprise my album of the year is also not a billion seller. I was just talking about Hugh Laurie a couple of years ago with Let Them Talk. This is the year he released his follow-up album, Didn't It Rain. I like Didn't It Rain an awful lot. So, album of the year, 2013, which is admittedly a weak year for music for me, Hugh Laurie, Didn't It Rain. And now 2014. Ooh, we're wrapping it up. Man, this was quick. In 2014, I've got one gotta mention, and my one gotta mention is Neil Diamond's Melody Road. And I gotta mention it not because it's such a stellar album, although it's a decent album. I mean, it's nothing to poo-poo. But more just because it's a sign of life from Neil Diamond, and any sign of life from Neil Diamond is, we got to mention that. When it comes to album of the year, though, my third runner-up is Pink Floyd's The Endless River. This album got a lot of shit when it came out from Pink Floyd fans. But as I have said multiple times, I am drawn to Pink Floyd because I really like David Gilmour. I like Nick Mason. I like Richard Wright. Roger, what? I like everybody else, right? So I like this stuff. I enjoyed The Endless River when it comes out. I occasionally, it's not like I listen to it every day, but it's my third runner-up for the year. My second runner-up is Nights Like This by Eli Paperboy Reed. I like Eli Paperboy Reed. My first runner-up, get that right, She and Him released their album Classics, which is an album of covers, and they do a really good job with this stuff. But my album of the year, and I have to do a pop, I own this album, but this album is hanging out in the hall. The album itself is Loudon Wainwright III's Haven't Got the Blues Yet. And my the CD cover for this is hanging out in the hallway here in my house. Because I went to see Loudon Wainwright III on this tour, and I got him to autograph it for me. One of the proudest moments of my life, sitting shoulder to shoulder with one of my heroes. And I didn't want to take it off the wall, so. But I love this album. I like Loudon Wainwright. This is his second album of the year, and probably his last album of the year. But this is fantastic music. I really like Haven't Got the Blues Yet, one of his stronger albums. And those are my albums of the year for the years 2005 through 2014. What do you think? Do you like these albums too? Am I out, barking at the moon, lunatic fringe weirdo? Got to be a better way of saying that, but I'm tired and I'm not going to try to redo it. What do you think? Drop that comment down below. Tell me what your albums of the year are. Drop those comments down below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd appreciate it if you click the like button while you're down there clicking. If you have not already done so, I would also appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to me, so I very much appreciate it. Thanks for hanging around with me today. And I hope that the rest of your day is playful. See you soon.